dined at Plantation House in company with the Marquis Montchenu, who amused the company with the importance which he attached to the grand naissance, high birth, relative to which he recounted some anecdotes. 16th. The adamant transport arrived from the Cape, bringing news of the arrival of Sir George Cockburn in England, and that he had an audience with the Prince Regent on the 2nd of August. An inspector of police named Rainsford arrived from England on the Cape. 17th. The allowances for Longwood diminished by order of Sir Hudson Lowe, 2 pounds of meat daily, in consequence of the departure of a servant who had received but 1 pound. A bottle of wine also struck off. The carters who bring up the provisions state that the fowl of Longwood is frequently inspected by Sir Thomas Reed on its arrival in town. Countess Bertrand sent down in the trunk containing her soiled linen some novels which she had borrowed from Miss Chesborough before the arrival of Sir Hudson Lowe in the island. They were placed on the top of the linen, and the trunk was unlocked. Sir Thomas Reed said that it was a violation of the proclamation and that Miss Chesborough should be turned off the island. He then examined the Countess's linen, upon which he made observations not consistent with the delicacy or the respect due to the female sex. Mentioned to the Emperor that I had been informed that he had saved Marshal Duroc's life when seized and condemned to death as an emigrant during his first campaigns in Italy, which was asserted to have been the cause of the great attachment subsequently displayed by Duroc to him until the hour of his death. Napoleon looked surprised and replied, "No such thing. Who told you that tale?" "I said that I had heard the Marquis Montchenu repeat it at public dinner." "There is not a word of truth in it," replied Napoleon. "I took Duroc out of the artillery train when he was a boy and protected him until his death, but I suppose Montchenu said this because Duroc was of an old family, which in that booby's eyes is the only source of merit. He despises everybody who has not as many 100 years of nobility to boast of as himself. It was such as Montchenu who were the chief cause of the revolution. Before it, such a man as Bertrand, who is worth an army of Montchenus, could not even be a suit lieutenant, while vieil enfant, old children, like him would be generals. Oh, God help, continued he, the nation that is governed by such. In my time, most of the generals of whose deeds France is so proud, sprung from that very class of plebeians so much despised by him. It surprises me, added he, that they have permitted the Duchess of Reggio to be premier dame, first lady, to the Duchess of Berry, as her husband was once a private soldier and did not spring from the grand naissance, high birth. I asked his opinion of the Duke of Reggio. "A brave man," replied Napoleon, "ma di poca testa, but of little brains. He has been influenced latterly by his young wife, who is of an old family, whose vanity and prejudices she inherits. However," continued he offered his services after my return from Elba and took the oath of allegiance to me. I asked him if he thought that he was sincere. "It might have been so, Signor Medico. If I had succeeded, I dare say he would have been." Napoleon very busily employed in dictating his memoirs to Counts Bertrand and Montholon. Sir Hudson Lowe objected to allowing the produce of the last plate, which had been disposed of, to be placed at the disposal of the French, alleging that it was too large a sum, viz. 295 pounds. It demanded an explanation of the manner in which so large a sum of money was to be disposed of. It appeared upon examination that instead of having 295 pounds disposable, there would be in reality only a few pounds. and 85 pounds was due to Marchand, 45 pounds to Cipriani, 16 pounds to Gentilini for money advanced by them to purchase extra articles of food previous to the sale of the last plate. Also 70 pounds to Mr. Balcomb's concern, 10 pounds to Lepage, and 20 pounds to Archambault for fowls. The 22nd. Orders sent up by Sir Hudson Lowe for a fresh reduction in the allowance of meat and wine. Saw Baron Shermer in the town, with whom I had some conversation. He was very desirous to see Napoleon, and informed me that Sir Hudson Lowe, in granting the commissioners permission to enter as far as the inner gate of Longwood, had required them to pledge their honor that they would not speak to Napoleon without first having obtained his permission. The 23rd, Sir Pulteney Malcolm arrived from the Cape. Napoleon, very anxious to obtain some newspapers, tried to procure some, but was informed that the governor had got all that were to be had. The 25th, on my return from town to Longwood, met Sir Hudson Lowe, who was riding up and down the road. When I came near to his excellency, he observed with an air of triumph, "You will meet your friend Las in custody." A few minutes afterwards met the Count, under charge of the governor's aide-de-camp, Pritchard, on his way to Hut's Gate. It had been effected in the following manner. About 3 o'clock, Sir Hudson Lowe, accompanied by Sir Thomas Reed, Major Gurker, and 3 dragoons, entered Longwood. Shortly afterwards, Captain Blakeney and the Minister of Police followed them. Sir Hudson and Major Gurker rode off a little to the left, while the others proceeded to Captain Poppleton's room, having first ordered a corporal and party from the guard to follow them up to the house. Sir Thomas ordered Captain Poppleton to send for Count Las, who was with Napoleon. After they had waited a short time, Las came out, was arrested while going into his room by Reed, and the Minister of Police, who took possession of his clothes and effects. His papers were sealed up by his son, who afterwards proceeded to Hut's Gate under custody, where he remained with his father in charge of an officer of the 66th Regiment, with orders not to be allowed to see anybody except the governor and his staff. It appeared that the Count had given a letter written upon silk to Scott, his servant, with which he was to proceed to England. Scott told this to his father, who had him brought to a Mr. Barker, and from thence to the governor, by whom he was committed to prison after undergoing an examination. Saw Napoleon in the evening, who appeared to have been wholly ignorant of Las intentions. "I am convinced," said he, "however, that there is nothing of consequence in the letter, as Las is an honest man, and too much attached to me to undertake anything of consequence without first having acquainted me with his project. You may depend on it that it is some letter of complaints to Milady about the conduct of this governor and the vexations which he inflicts upon us, or to his bankers. He has 4,000 or 5,000 pounds in some bankers' hands in London, which I was to have had for my necessities, and he did not like his letter to go to the governor's hands, as none of us will trust him. If Las had made his project known to me, I would have stopped him. Not that I disapprove of his endeavoring to make our situation known, but I disapprove of the bungling manner in which he has attempted it. For a man of talent like Las to make an ambassador of a slave who could not read or write, to go upon a 6 months' embassy to England, where he never has been, knows nobody, and who, unless the governor was a Shiccone, a great fool, would not be permitted to leave the island, is to me incomprehensible. I can only account for it by supposing that the weight of afflictions which presses upon us, together with the melancholy situation of his son, condemned to die of an incurable malady, have impaired his judgment. All this I wish to be known. I am sorry for it, because people will accuse me of having been privy to the plan, and will have a poor opinion of my understanding, supposing me to have consented to so shallow a plot. I would have recommended him to have requested to some man of honor to make our situation known in England, and have taken a letter to the Prince Regent, first asking him to pledge his honor to observe secrecy if he did not choose to perform it. If he betrayed us, so much the worse for himself. Las Casas has with him my campaigns in Italy and all the official correspondence between the Admiral, Governor, and Longwood, and I am told that he has made a journal containing an account of what passes here, with many anecdotes of myself. I have desired Bertrand to go to Plantation House and ask for them. It is the least interesting part of my life, as it only relates to the commencement of it, but I should not like the governor to have it. I am sure, continued he, that there is nothing of consequence in Las Casas' letter, or he would have made me acquainted with it, though I dare say this blank will write 100 falsehoods to England about it. When in Paris, after my return from Elba, I found Mr. Blacka's private papers, which he left behind when he ran away from the Tuileries, a letter which had been written in Elba by one of my sister Pauline's chambermaids, and appeared to have been composed in a moment of anger. Pauline's very handsome and very graceful. There was a description of her habits, of her dress, her wardrobe, and everything that she liked, of how fond I was of contributing to her happiness, and that I had superintended the furnishing of her boudoir myself. What an extraordinary man I was! That one night I had burnt my finger dreadfully, and had merely poured a bottle of ink over it without appearing to regard the pain, and many little bettises, true enough perhaps. This letter, Monsieur Blackhouse, had got interpolated with horrid stories, in fact, insinuating that I had slept with my sister, and in the margin, in the handwriting of the interpolator, was written, "To be printed." 26. Napoleon in his bath asked if I had heard anything more respecting Las Casas. Professed his sorrow to lose him. Las Casas, said he, is the only one of the French who can speak English well or explain it to my satisfaction. I cannot now read an English newspaper. Madame Bertrand understands English perfectly, but you know, when can I trouble a lady? This cause was necessary to me. Ask the Admiral to interest himself for that poor man, who I am convinced has not said as much as there was in Montalin's letter. He will die under all these afflictions, for he has no bodily strength, and his unfortunate son will finish his existence a little sooner. He asked if Madame Bertrand had not been unwell, and said he believed she suspected that her mother was either dead or most alarmingly ill. Those Creoles, said he, are very susceptible. Josephine was subject to nervous attacks when in affliction. She was really an amiable woman, elegant, charming, and affable. Era la dama la più graziosa di Francia, the most accomplished lady in France. She was the goddess of her dress. All the fashions originated with her. Everything she put on appeared elegant, and she was so kind, so humane. She was the best woman in France. He then spoke about the distress prevailing in England, and said that it was caused by the abuses of the ministry. You have done wonders, said he. You have effected impossibilities, I may say, but I think that England, encumbered with a national debt, which will take 40 years of peace and commerce to pay off, may be compared to a man who has drunk large quantities of brandy to give him courage and strength, but afterwards, weakened by the stimulus, which had imparted energy for the moment, he totters and finally falls, his powers entirely exhausted by the unnatural means used to excite them. Some conversation took place then relative to the Battle of Austerlitz. Napoleon said that prior to the battle, the King of Prussia had signed the coalition against him. Haugwitz, said he, came to inform me of it and advised me to think of peace. I replied, the event of the battle which is approaching will decide everything. I think that I shall gain it, and if so, I will dictate such a peace as answers my purposes. Now I will hear nothing. The event answered my expectation. I gained a victory so decisive as to enable me to dictate what terms I pleased. I asked him if Haugwitz had been gained by him? He replied, no, but he was of opinion that Prussia should never play the first fiddle, giocare il primo ruolo in the affairs of the continent, that she was only a second-rate power and ought to act as such. Even if I had lost the battle, I expected that Prussia would not cordially join the Allies, as it would naturally be her interest to preserve an equilibrium in Europe, which would not result from her joining those who, on being defeated, would be much the strongest. Besides, jealousies and suspicions would arise, and the Allies would not have trusted to the King of Prussia, who had betrayed them before. I gave Hanover to the Prussians, continued he, on purpose to embroil them with you, produce a war, and shut you out from the continent. The King of Prussia was blockhead enough to believe that he could keep Hanover and still remain at peace with you. He made war upon me afterwards like a madman, induced by the Queen and Prince Louis, with some other young man who persuaded him that Prussia was strong enough, and without Russia, a few weeks convinced him of the contrary. I asked him if the King of Prussia had joined the Allies with his army previous to Austerlitz, what he would have done. Mr. Doctor, that would have entirely altered the face of things. He eulogized the King of Saxony, who he said was a truly good man. The King of Bavaria, a plain good man. The King of Württemberg, a man of considerable talent, but unprincipled and wicked. Alexander and the latter sit here, the only sovereigns in Europe possessed of talents. Lord Blank, un mauvais sujet, un agitateur, a bad subject, mere jobber. While negotiating in Paris, he sent couriers away every day to London for the purpose of stock jobbing, which was solely what he was interested in. Had there been an honest man instead of an intriguing stock jobber, it is very likely the negotiation would have succeeded. I was much grieved afterwards to have had any affairs with such a contemptible character. This was pronounced with an air of disdain.